If you haven't stretched in years, or maybe ever, you're not alone. Most of the patients I meet tell me the same thing. Doctor, I just feel tight all the time, but stretching looks too hard. That hesitation is completely valid, because the truth is, it's not your fault that your body resists movement. It's biology. After 60, your connective tissue, the fascia that wraps every muscle like a thin silk web, starts losing hydration. It becomes less like elastic and more like old parchment. And when that happens, even a small reach can feel like your body is fighting against itself. But here's the part most people don't know. You don't need extreme yoga poses or hour-long routines to change that. Your fascia is alive. It listens to breath, gentle tension, and repetition. And with the right kind of movement, not force, but rhythm, it can drink again. It can rehydrate and unlock the flexibility you thought was gone for good. I'm Dr. Samuel Hartley. For over 25 years, I've helped thousands of older adults restore mobility, not through punishment, but through precision. And in this session, I'll guide you through 4 simple science-backed movements that anyone, even someone who's never stretched before, can do safely and effectively. You won't need special equipment, just a chair, a towel, and a few quiet minutes. By the end, you may feel something remarkable, that your body isn't old, it's simply waiting to move again. But before we begin, remember, this content is for educational purposes only. Always talk with your healthcare provider before starting new exercises, especially if you have medical conditions or pain. Now, let's start with the science of why these gentle stretches work so powerfully, and why they can help your body feel decades younger. When I ask my patients why they feel so stiff, most shrug and say, "I guess that's just age." But it isn't that simple. Stiffness isn't age, it's a signal. It's your fascia, your joints, and your circulation quietly asking for attention. Inside your body, every muscle fiber is wrapped in a thin sheet of connective tissue called fascia. Think of it like the skin of an orange, a seamless network that gives structure to every movement you make. In your youth, fascia is supple and full of fluid. It slides smoothly, letting your limbs move easily. But after 60, something subtle begins to happen. Fascia starts to lose water content. It becomes stickier, less elastic. And when that tissue stiffens, your muscles don't actually shorten. They just get trapped in a tighter space. That's why reaching overhead or standing up from a chair suddenly feels harder, even if your muscles haven't lost much strength. There's another layer too, circulation. Gentle stretching increases nitric oxide, a molecule that helps your blood vessels relax. Harvard researchers found that even light, sustained stretches, 30 seconds at a time, can improve local blood flow by up to 20%. That means every stretch you do is not just about flexibility, it's also a vascular tune-up for your tissues, your joints, and even your brain. Here's the beautiful part. Your fascia can heal. It can rehydrate, reawaken, and remember its natural rhythm. All it needs is consistent low-pressure movement paired with deep breathing. When you inhale deeply, oxygen expands your fascia. When you exhale, fluid redistributes through the tissue like water through a sponge. That's why the stretches I'll show you next focus as much on how you breathe as on how you move. So, if you've ever thought, "I'm too stiff to start," remember this. Stiffness is not a wall, it's a waiting room. Your body is ready for a small signal, a message that says, "We're still alive, we're still moving." And that message begins with 4 movements. Each one has a purpose, one for your upper spine, one for your hamstrings, one for your hips, and one for your chest. But the real transformation happens when you see what they do together. Let's start with the first, a movement that opens your posture, frees your shoulders, and lets your lungs expand again. The heart-opening chair. Stretch. If you've spent years leaning forward, reading, driving, looking down at a phone, your body has memorized that shape. Over time, the front of the chest closes, the shoulders round, and the lungs lose space to breathe. That quiet collapse doesn't just affect posture, it changes how your heart and brain receive oxygen. So, let's open that space again. Find a sturdy chair. Place your hands gently on the top and step back until your spine forms a long line from your hips to your fingertips. Take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, let your chest sink slightly between your arms. Not forcing, not straining, just gravity and breath. This movement rehydrates the thoracic fascia, the connective tissue between your ribs and shoulders. When it stretches, it signals your nervous system to shift out of tension mode. A Harvard pilot study in 2021 found that 5 minutes of chest expansion increased lung elasticity and nitric oxide levels, molecules that keep blood vessels relaxed and youthful. As you breathe, imagine that every inhale lifts the fog from your chest. Every exhale releases years of guarded breathing. You may feel a warmth rising along your back or a tingling under your arms. That's oxygen finding its rhythm again. And for many of my patients, that first full breath brings an unexpected emotion: relief. Because it's not just posture that opens, it's the feeling of being unlocked. The bedside hamstring revival. Most people think tight hamstrings are just about the legs, but in truth, they're your body's brake pedal. When they stay locked, every step, every bend, every climb becomes harder. Not from weakness, but from a lack of communication between your muscles and your circulation. Here's how to restore that dialogue. Lie back on your bed or mat. Loop a towel behind the arch of one foot and lift the leg slowly until you feel a gentle pull along the back of your thigh. Keep your other leg relaxed on the bed. Now, inhale through your nose and gently press your heel upward into the towel, just a touch of effort. As you exhale, let the resistance melt away and allow your elbows to draw the leg a little closer. That's the secret. Tension on the inhale, surrender on the exhale. This pattern reactivates your posterior chain reflex, the system that stabilizes your spine, supports your hips, and pumps venous blood back toward your heart. A 2019 study in the Journal of Aging Research found that seniors who practiced nightly leg stretches experienced a 22% improvement in lower limb circulation and slept more soundly. As your leg lowers, pause. Compare both sides. You'll notice the stretched leg feels lighter, freer, as though the floor beneath it has softened. That's fascia releasing its grip. That's your nervous system saying, we can trust this again. In just 1 minute per side, you're not only restoring flexibility, you're sending oxygen to the muscles that keep you standing tall. And the next morning, when you swing your legs out of bed, they'll answer you with quiet strength. The seated hip and groin flow. The hips are the body's emotional vault. They hold decades of sitting, tension, and sometimes even unspoken stress. For many seniors, tight hips create a chain reaction. Lower back pain, poor balance, digestive sluggishness, even fatigue. To release them, we need both patience and precision. Sit upright on the floor or at the edge of a firm chair. Spread your legs gently, just enough to feel the inner thighs begin to lengthen. Rest your hands on the floor in front of you. Now inhale, lifting your chest slightly. Exhale and hinge forward from your hips, not your waist. Each breath becomes a rhythm. Lift and lengthen, fold and soften. You're teaching your fascia to glide again, to remember that movement is not danger, it's dialogue. When you stay here for 60 to 90 seconds, something remarkable happens internally. The psoas muscle, deep inside your pelvis, begins to release. This is the same muscle that tightens when you sit for hours, or when life keeps you on alert. As it relaxes, your breathing deepens, your spine decompresses, and the pelvis, your center of gravity, resets. In 2022, Physiotherapy Review reported that seniors who practice gentle hip abduction stretches improved balance and walking speed by 18%. But statistics don't capture what my patients tell me afterward. They say, "Doctor, it feels like I can finally walk without fear." That's what this movement is about, reclaiming the quiet confidence that comes when your body feels safe in its own rhythm again. The chest expansion stretch. If the first movement opened your posture, this one restores your presence. Sit with your legs bent or straight, hands behind you, fingertips pointing backward. Pull your shoulders slightly down and back, and lift your chest toward the sky. As you inhale, imagine light entering the front of your body. As you exhale, allow your heart to rise just 1 inch higher. What you're doing here is activating the pectoralis fascia, the connective web that influences not only your upper body's strength, but also your breathing pattern and emotional state. When this fascia stiffens, your breath becomes shallow. When it softens, the nervous system quiets and oxygen flows freely again. NIH researchers reviewing over 20 studies found that chest expansion exercises like this can increase oxygen uptake and lower stress hormones, a measurable sign that movement and emotion are deeply connected. Stay for a few breaths longer. Feel the warmth spreading through your arms, across your collarbones, into your face. It's subtle, not a burn, but a pulse. That pulse is nitric oxide, your body's natural youth molecule, opening blood vessels, refreshing circulation. Then gently release. Notice how the world seems a little larger, how your breathing feels effortless again. That's the real result. Not flexibility alone, but freedom. You're not just stretching muscles, you're giving your body permission to breathe, to circulate, to feel alive again. Each of these 4 movements on their own brings comfort, but together, practiced daily, they form a quiet ritual, a conversation between your body and your years. 5 minutes a day is all it takes to remind your cells that you are still capable, still strong, still here. Now that you've learned the 4 movements, the question becomes, when and how should you use them? The answer, surprisingly, isn't as much as possible. It's when your body listens best. After 60, your fascia, that living web that wraps every muscle, behaves a little differently. It responds best to consistency, not intensity. So the goal isn't to stretch harder, it's to stretch softer but more often. Here's how I guide my own patients. In the morning, do 1 round right after waking, even before breakfast. Overnight, your connective tissues lose fluid and become less pliable. Just 5 minutes of gentle stretching helps draw water back into the fascia, rehydrating your joints like morning sunlight melting frost. That's why seniors who stretch before coffee often say they feel awake in their bones. In the evening, repeat the same set, slowly by lamplight. This time, your breath becomes the medicine. Each exhale lowers cortisol and prepares the body for deep sleep. In one study from Frontiers in Physiology, 2020, adults over 60 who performed slow stretches before bed increased parasympathetic activity, the body's repair mode, by nearly 25%. Timing matters, but so does awareness. Never stretch into pain. Never chase the sensation. Instead, use the 3-breath rule. On the first breath, find your position. On the second, release the unnecessary effort. On the third, notice what changes. That's how fascia learns, through patience, not pressure. If you sit for long periods during the day, insert micro stretches. Place your hands on a wall and breathe into your spine for 10 seconds. Stand up, lift your chest, and rotate your shoulders once every hour. Little motions act like drops of oil in the body's hinges, preventing stiffness before it starts. And here's what most people miss. Your body loves ritual. When movement becomes a rhythm, morning, evening, micro moments, your circulation synchronizes with your breath, your energy stabilizes, and your mind grows quieter. You start to feel available to life again. When I first began working with older adults, I thought stretching was about flexibility. I was wrong. It's about freedom. Freedom to reach for the shelf without wincing. Freedom to walk through your garden without fear of falling. Freedom to breathe deeply and feel that simple pulse of life moving easily through your body again. Every one of those 4 movements, the chair stretch, the hamstring revival, the hip flow, the chest expansion, is more than a routine. They're reminders that your body is still a living conversation. It hasn't forgotten how to move, it's just been waiting for you to speak first. When you practice them daily, something subtle begins to change. Your posture lifts before you even think about it. Your steps feel lighter, and sometimes, when you least expect it, you catch yourself standing taller in the mirror, not out of pride, but out of peace. You see, movement doesn't only reshape the body, it rewires confidence. It tells the brain, I'm still capable. And when that belief returns, independence follows. For the men and women I've worked with, that's the turning point. When stiffness no longer feels like aging, but like a signal that healing is possible. So tonight before bed, try just 1 minute of the first stretch. Let your breath slow, let your shoulders soften, and remember, this isn't about doing more. It's about remembering that less, done gently, done consistently, can still transform everything. Because vitality isn't something you chase, it's something you reclaim. And every time you move, you whisper to your body, we're not done yet. Tomorrow, when you wake up, let your first movement be a promise, not a struggle.